Hey everybody, better late than never. I've been in back-to-back meetings, so it has been quite the journey today. And so give me a second here to get myself into my Xray so that we can continue on test automation with Xray today. And I think it's all working correctly so that we can do the dual stream between vertical and horizontal. So that should be interesting. And let me know in the chat if you're coming in on vertical or if you're coming in on horizontal. This is the first time that I do it this way, and we're experimenting. We're testing the waters, if you will. And so just kind of let me know, and I'm kind of trying to center myself here so you can all see me. This is a very weird phenomenon where I can see myself vertically and horizontally. So make sure you click on the right link. There is a horizontal and a vertical view. Okay, so with that said, we're jumping into, and somebody's got to keep me honest, folks. If you guys do not see me sharing my screen, I should always be sharing my screen. So keep me honest. We're jumping into test automation with Xray. Again, this is part of our Xray certification. As a partner, we need to take a certain number of classes. This is going to be class number 8 out of 11. So we're almost there, and we have scheduled class 9 and 10 through the rest of this week. 11 will be on Monday, so make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you're dropping likes on these videos, sharing with your colleagues, your coworkers, and let's jump into, here we go, if I can find myself. So Xray, test automation with CI/CD. So some training goals: understand test automation and CI core concepts, understand Xray's test automation scope, become aware of supported test automation frameworks and capabilities, understand how to import results from common test automation frameworks, understand the specifics related to Gherkin framework, for example, Cucumber. Sorry, I don't normally say Gherkin that weird. Understand how to use Jenkins and CI/CD tools together with Xray, and learn recommendations related to test automation with CI/CD. And folks, this is where we separate the weak from the strong. You can use Xray for just test management, right? It's built for that. But if you really truly want to be able to use Xray for what it's intended for and be able to pull this into your full CI/CD pipeline, like what we're going to cover here is very, very important. You want to be able to make your tests automated so that you don't really have to think about them too much and all the verification and validation is happening on the back end. But that's always easier said than done. And so in this course, we're going to kind of learn how all that comes into play within the world of Xray. Because again, very, very important skill set to have here. And you just need to be aware that you can do this. Because a lot of teams do it, but I think you kind of work really hard to get this done. And so this should work a lot better. So we're going to talk about automation capabilities, abstracting automated tests, test automation and CI/CD, common integration scenario with test automation frameworks and tools, integration with Cucumber and Gherkin frameworks, CI/CD with Jenkins, CI/CD tools with tools based on pipelines managed with code configs, and the recommendations on implementing CI/CD. Before you begin, you're going to probably want to know what automated tests mean. And so tests written in code. For example, in Java, using JUnit, a script, or some custom framework. A test made with or using a GUI tool with recording capabilities, for example, Selenium, as this is one that I've used in the past, Catalone Recorder, and UFT. In the chat, folks, which of these tools have you used for your automated testing? Let me know. I'm kind of curious. As you can see, Xray is going to be able to support quite a variety of these different tools. With the workflow chart-like capabilities such as UFT, with building block capabilities like Catalan Studio, Tosca, and UFT. We also have BDD-driven tests. So these are behavior-driven development containing behavior and implementation code, for example, Cucumber. And so behavior may be managed next to the code in line or may be managed separately from the code. Note, some GUI tools may generate code behind files, others not. Before you begin, Xray uses test types. What does that mean? So by default, there's 3 test types that are provided to differentiate tests based on some characteristics related to their structure and not if they are automated or not. So this is part of Xray's basic setup. And so we have these 3 types, which is manual, Cucumber, and generic. And you got to understand that the manual ones are going to be very sequential. You're typing in here the actual test steps into the test. Cucumber is going to use Gherkin. So we're probably going to want to use this Cucumber one. This is what's going to help facilitate the automated test ones. And then generic is going to be unstructured without any steps. I don't really recommend that one unless you really need that kind of flexibility. Beware of the semantics. The naming system has been used since the beginning of Xray. However, it's not the most accurate. For example, cucumber tests have been used to abstract spec flow or behave or Serenity BDD test scenarios. So therefore, their usage is broader than their initial intent. Xray aims to overcome this with custom test types and test kinds available for cloud. I don't know that I've seen them, but apparently they're available in the cloud. In Xray, there's no specific test type or any explicit way of identifying automated tests. Your team decides how to assign those semantics if needed. Remember that given test idea can be executed, that a given test idea can be executed manually or through automation. In most cases, unstructured generic tests, i.e. without steps, are related to automated tests. Cucumber, Gherkin tests are also usually executed using automation, which is very, very key here. All right, so we are done with this first module. We're going to move on to automation capabilities. Automation capabilities at a glance. So Xray is your single source of truth for testing results, acting as the one place to track and consolidate testing results, including those from automation. So this is going to give you the visibility of test results from all sorts of automation frameworks. So this is going to support Cucumber, SpecFlow, JUnit, TestNG, NUnit, Robot framework, Cypress, etc. So whatever framework you're using, it should be compatible in one way, shape, or another with Xray, which is really, really good, right? And Xray should become your single source of truth. This is why Xray is a expensive but fairly useful tool for organizations that have any kind of testing requirements, especially when you compare it to the competition. You're going to assess how automation results reflect on coverage and on traceability. We've talked about coverage and traceability in the previous section. So again, make sure you subscribe to the channel and go watch our other live videos there where we did talk about coverage. Then we have the ability to adopt BDD by allowing you to manage the specification of the behavior in or outside of Jira. Automation capabilities at a glance. So you can have visibility from results of tests written in code, for example, a JUnit, TestNG, NUnit, XUnit. You can have visibility from results of tests made using the GUI tool. And then with BDD specifics, it can be used to specify some BDD-related test scenarios written using the Gherkin framework, for example, Cucumber, Serenity, BDD, SpecFlow, Behave, and track the results. You can also have visibility from results of other BDD test results, but not in its specification. This is the stuff that's out of scope. So if you're taking notes, this is going to be very important, folks. Is there a way to toggle vertical versus horizontal? The vertical is very hard to read. If you're on the phone, so there are two links for the stream. You may want to make sure you get on the right stream. So on YouTube, make sure you are in the horizontal link. The vertical link is being fed to those hopefully on mobile. So this should be a little bit easier. And what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to see if I can zoom in just a little bit more. Probably not that way. Let me see if I can come back this way. See if I can make it a little bit easier to read. All right, so these are the things that are out of scope. And I'm trying to see, I don't think there's anything special that I can do other than maximize myself. Nope, I do not want to max myself because now I don't know. I definitely don't want to do that. Okay, so I've got to shrink myself back down. Okay. Yeah, so I think you should be able to be on the right link. All right, so Xray, out of scope stuff. Xray isn't nor provides a GUI tool for designing automated tests using building blocks. So except for Cucumber, where the building blocks are the actual steps that can be specified and managed in Xray. It also does not provide any out-of-the-box yet ability to trigger a CI job from within Jira. Trigger CI is possible with third-party apps. Automation for Jira available in all Jira Cloud instances. Cprime Power Apps. Script Runner can be used to implement the ability of triggering automation right from Jira or Xray. Please check the official documentation and integration for more details. All right, so that's going to be it for that one. And let's move on to the next section. Okay, so now that I'm zoomed in, this stuff is a little harder to get to. So let's see if we can make that work. All right, why automated test rates or why automations in Xray? So you're going to handle them like you do for other tests. Tests may be added and tracked in test plans and in test executions. All results from a given automated test are reported to the same test, and the ability to review and comment test automation results. Tests may be linked with requirements, track the impact on the coverage of requirements, combined with the results of manual scripted and exploratory testing. Test types available for mapping. So we're going to have the test, right, which is going to be the actual work item we have in Jira. And its mapping is going to depend on the test nature. Remember, you have to pick between manual, cucumber, generic. So to map it, you're going to have to, again, make your selection. So if you're going to do tests as a code, you want to use a generic test. It's possible to enforce to an existing manual test through, though. The Gherkin scenario derived from BDD, this is going to be using Gherkin. And then we have non-Gherkin, which is going to be generic. And then tests made using the GUI tool is going to be generic as well. Tests from a custom homemade framework can be mapped as generic or manual depending on the visibility and the steps are needed. In most cases, automated test scripts will be automatically mapped to generic unstructured test without steps. Submit the test results to Xray and tests will be identified and reused or auto-provisioned if needed. No extra work needed. All right, so that's it for that one. So the key takeaway here, folks, is that if you are going to not be using the cucumber here that's built into Xray, you have to use the generic. So remember, you have three options. You have manual, cucumber, and you're going to have generic. And so cucumber is going to be if you're using it here natively within Xray, and then generic is going to be anything outside that you need to essentially still be able to use and leverage. And so this is very important information to have. Okay, next page. Test automation and CI/CD. Again, let me get rid of all these extra things so that I can get to the full screen here so you all can see it better. So what is test automation and CI/CD? So test automation is a set of automated checks, functional and non-functional, for example, performance security, essential for regression testing. Continuous integration is a set of practices in order to successfully integrate components. It requires test automation. And then we have continuous delivery, a set of practices in order to have shippable builds of products continuously. And then that requires your CI. So this is all part of a grand DevOps scheme. Your test automation and CI. So you develop automated tests. You use a test automation framework, which again, we've covered a couple already. You submit the results and then you track results and impacts. This is the continuous integration stack, where we start from the bottom, right? You're going to have your programming languages. So you're doing C#, C++. I don't know how vibe coding kind of changes things, but you have your language of choice. Then you get into your test automation framework. So this is where you're going to have like JUnit, your cucumbers, your test NGs, your robot frameworks, Playwright. Then you need to have some sort of a CI/CD tool, whether that's Bamboo, Jenkins, Bitbucket, GitHub, GitLab, right? There's going to be quite a few here. And then those make calls to Xray so that we can get the data. And ultimately, the data is what we want. To develop your automated test as you like. So you can use any language for developing your automated test. Xray processes the reports generated by your test runner, which is usually part of the automation framework. Your automated scripts can be developed in any language or tool if you generate a test report. Choose a test automation framework. So use a framework able to produce machine-friendly reports. Xray processes the reports, for example, JUnit's XML file generated by your test runner. Xray supports tests automation reports in several formats. Many test runners and tools can generate reports in the standard JUnit XML format. So these are all the available options. And so folks, let us know in the comment section if you would like to see more specific trainings and tutorials on these different tools, because there's a lot of tools out there. So that means there's an evergreen of content that we can potentially be making for y'all here. Test automation framework report capability. So you can import and create test cases in Jira with auto provisioning test issues in Jira Xray as an abstraction of the automated test. You can uniquely identify automated tests. So identify tests in the report and skip auto provisioning if they already exist, reusing tests. Import results. So you can import the test results, including overall status, error messages, and timings. Assign labels to tests. Assign labels to the corresponding auto provision test issues right in Jira, right from code. Automatically link the requirements in Jira. So you can link automated tests to existing requirements in Jira right from the code, usually using an annotation. And then we got semantics of the results. Track additional information besides overall pass-fail, including results for keyword and data-driven testing. All right, so let's talk about the framework report. So depending on the test framework being used, the capabilities differ. What Xray can do whenever processing the results from the report file. For Cucumber and other Gherkin-based frameworks, the flow and the capabilities are a bit different. So these are some of the popular ones that they're showing, and you're just going to be able to see a table. So definitely take like a screenshot of this if you need to, or reference Xray's official documentation so you can see what is actually supported. Now, The next step is to submit results by REST API or CI plugin. So with the REST API or some CI plugins, you can import your test automation results. There's a standard endpoint per test report format. You can also import Cucumber Gherkin scenarios from existing features like feature files. You can export and generate Cucumber features. So the API, REST API on server graph, and provides additional information such as management of testing related entities, exporting results, and more. These features can be useful for more advanced customizations, custom integration scenarios. Multi-part formats: what, why, and how. So what? An alternative way to submit test automation results provides more flexibility. Hello. Why? It may be required, or you may want to customize test or test execution issues. Sometimes your Jira instance may require certain custom fields and specific issue types and their screens. For example, your test or test execution, or you may want to specify some attributes from them. We're covering Xray test automation capabilities. Okay, how? So using JSON as a payload, the Jira way. It's based on the Jira's REST API syntax for updating an issue. And we have multi-part endpoints that are allowed. So you have customization of the fields at the test execution that will be created, and then customizations of the fields on the test that will be created due to auto provisioning. All right, do you do any test automation? Track results and impacts in Jira. So in Jira, test results are embedded in a standard test execution issue. A test execution contains the results of the automated test. Each automated test corresponds to a test, and its result corresponds to a test run of that test. A test execution is usually created when test results are imported. It's possible to reuse an existing one. Please check the corresponding REST API endpoint syntax. Multi-part endpoints will always create new test executions. Also, very importantly, folks, the APIs between Jira Data Center and Jira Cloud are very different, or can be very different. So make sure you're in the right Jira for when you're doing this, because depending on which version you're on, and it looks at this generic, this training is very generic, so it's not going to give us one over the other. So you want to be very particular and make sure that whatever it is you're trying to do, it's actually supported in the environment that you want to do this in. Number 4, track your results and impacts in Jira. So impacts multiple levels from the test up to the requirements. So a test, the immediate consequence is that the test result will impact the calculated status of each test. For example, if a test was previously considered fail on version 1.0 and the current result was successful in version 1.0, then the test will be considered a pass. Test plan, which is another issue type inside of Jira, which is related to Xray. If a test plan is identified as a complementary attribute to the test report, it will be assigned to the corresponding test execution and will impact the consolidated result as shown. And then we have the requirements. So if the tests are linked to requirements, except, for example, your stories, your tasks, your epics, things of that nature, the results will impact the coverage calculated for those requirements. Note that linkage can be done manually in Jira or during the test import process. All right, so that's that with that one, and we're about 17% through here, folks. This is a very big lecture here, and so we're gonna try to power our way through all this as quickly as we can. But up next, we're talking about integration scenario with test automation frameworks and tools. So how it works at a glance. So you write the test automation code. You use whatever test automation library, frameworks, or tools you want. You submit the test automation results to Xray using the REST API or one of the available plugins for some CI tools. And that's it. You can now track the results in Jira. So it's fairly simple, but I'm going to chalk this up to easier said than done. We're going to want to eventually build some examples of this so we can show you all the complexities here. Let's talk about test as code. So workflow for JUnit, NUnit, XUnit, TestNG, robot framework based test results. So auto provisioning of test issues or reuse existing ones. You have the ability to enforce results to an already existing test issue. And you also have the ability to link tests to requirements right from the code using their issue key. Simple, but powerful. Yeah, not having it could be painful. And having it is a huge CYA. A lot of regulated industries require this stuff. Thanks for subbing. Appreciate it. Oh, I can do this too. Yay. Thank you. All right. This applies to the other test automation frameworks. For example, we have Cypress, Jest, Playwright, as it is dependent on test report format. So here's an example of a JUnit, right? So this is some JUnit code here. And when you bring it into Xray, it's going to look like this. You're going to have your test type, which is generic, because remember, we're bringing it from an external UV tool, or I guess in this case, code tool. And then you're going to have the description of it. So you'll see that it'll be in here. And then they have other examples here, folks. We have the robot framework example. So if you're using robot framework, this is what it's going to look like. You tag the ticket here. You want to make sure you're tagging the Jira ID or the issue key, and then it'll the magic will happen automatically behind the scenes. So let's talk about what happens during the CI process. So on your first iteration, your build, right? You're going to write your test, your code. You're going to execute the test inside your CI environment, and then the report results are going to go to Jira. Then you basically rinse and repeat. You create more tests in Jira, and you go on forever and ever. So the test of generic test types will be created corresponding to the test implemented as code. The generic definition contains a unique identifier for the test. A test execution for all these tests will be created, containing the results in their respective test runs. It is also possible to update an existing test execution if it is provided during the submission. Great. That would be really awesome, folks. Thank you so much. Yeah, we appreciate it. All right, second iteration. So as the results are reported from the previous created test, no tests are created or duplicated. A test execution for all these tests will be created, containing the results in the respective test runs. It is also possible to update an existing test execution if it is provided during the submission. Submitting results from the robot framework. So in the next video, we're going to learn how to have the visibility of your robot framework in Jira. So let's jump into that. We're going to click on next. We're officially 21% of the way through, and very similar to how we've done this in the past, folks. We'll mute the video, make it full screen, and I'm going to narrate what's going on to the best of my ability. So here we are inside of a test plan, and we are now switching over to robot, right? So we have the robot framework. You can see that we tagged Rob11. It's kind of a little hard to see in your screen, but trust me when I tell you, we have Rob11 there tagged inside of our framework, and we're putting in our test plan. So we've identified the name of the test plan, and then we have some other metadata, but more importantly, we have like all the API information, so we know where to write the stuff down, right? And so you just run and execute. This is going to log in. It's going to do its magic, and we're going to be prompted to basically go do our actual test at this point. So we're jumping into Firefox, and we're doing the thing that we're supposed to do, right? So in here, you're going to want to queue up whatever you're trying to actually do. Okay, I'm going to fast forward a little bit as the application is a little broken here. So, all right. So once we have that, we're going to back it up a little bit, right? You're going to see that we have a failure on Rob21. The test actually failed, and we can go into the test plan. We're going to do a quick refresh of our test plan, and you're going to see that our statuses are now in here. We had seven tests that passed, one that failed, and then we can open up our execution results, and we're going to be able to see exactly what happened here. So we have the valid login failed, and so we can go back into our requirement or back into like the status of all this, so you can see the actual details in more detail, what actually happened here. So we were clicking the login button. It's supposed to send you to the welcome page. Nothing happened, and so you can see this is all done through automation. So there wasn't really anything you had to do. So normally, if you don't do test automation, you have to sit here and you have to go through all these steps and document it and kind of just, do the work, right? But here we found that we have a problem, which the problem apparently was that we had the wrong password. So now we're going to put the correct password in, and then we're going to be able to, again, continue our testing, put in the correct password. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll work this time. Doesn't look like it's doing it very well, but let's fast forward a little bit here, right? So now we have our test results here inside a robot. You can see all the pass, and then we have 0 failed. So once those are pushed into Jira, we're going to be able to refresh what we're looking at just right now. And this time, instead of a failed one, because we updated the correct password, we now have a pass on the valid login, and we can go to our test plan, and we're going to be able to go see the results on our test plan of that particular run that we just did. You can see all 8 passed, and that valid one is logged in as correctly. And now we have 2 runs, right? We have two executions that we did. One that had the failure, one that has the pass, which is really, really good. And then hello to everybody, right? And now we have a pass here for our test coverage. We are good. We successfully have test coverages that passed the test here. All right, we're moving on to the robot framework examples. Let me see if I can move this stuff out of the way. Okay, so we just have one slide here. So on robot framework, in the chat, folks, have you used robot? Anybody using robot? This is the first time that I hear robot. I'm familiar with JUnit. I'm familiar with some of the other ones, but robot is definitely one of the ones that I've never used before. So let me know in the chat, folks, if you've ever heard of it or have used it in the past. The overview, though, the target system under test is a web server having a dummy login page, which we aim to test, related to story initially created in Jira without any tests. The test plan was created in Jira for tracking, consolidating the automation results from multiple builds. The robot framework test cases use keywords built on top of the RF Selenium library and running the test and importing the results from the command line. Now, the outcomes, the tests are automatically provisioned if they don't exist yet, right? This is very key, folks. So you might have missed this, right? But essentially, the story that we were doing here didn't have any tests. The tests are automated. They're in your code. And automatically through this integration, we're able to get the tests into Jira. So that's really good. The executions are also automatically created once per each iteration or build. And the test executions are then linked to the test plan, again, because of the API call that we had. So it's very powerful, folks. If you're not doing test automations and you're doing some sort of testing, you definitely want to be considering your test automations here. All right, let's talk a little bit about Gherkin and Cucumber, because this one's a cool one. All right, so Cucumber and Gherkin, this is the one that I've had a lot more experience with. It's a lot more, I'll call it intuitive as opposed to the other ones. The other ones, you kind of need to be a lot more technical. But let's see what we got here. So Cucumber and Gherkin are based, Cucumber and others are Gherkin-based frameworks have specification, Gherkin, an implementation code. Their scenarios and backgrounds must exist in Xray so that they can report those results against them. So the specifications may be edited with Xray or not using one of these approaches. So in Xray as the master of editing scenarios and backgrounds, or using VCS, or visual version control system, such as Git, as the master to store scenarios and backgrounds, while the addition is done by some external IDE, for example, Visual Studio Code, Eclipse, IntelliJ, things of that nature. So let's talk about the Xray as a master workflow. So this has been also known as the standard workflow, as it was the one initially supported by Xray. So Xray Jira is used by master for editing and managing Cucumber scenarios and backgrounds. BDD, specifications in Jira, implementation stored in SVCS, such as Git. So you create Cucumber tests in Jira. So you're physically going to Jira and you're going to do these things in there. You're going to export your Cucumber files from Jira out. You're going to implement the automated test code inside of your tools. You're going to execute the tools in your CI/CD environment. And then you're going to report the results back to Jira. The tests need to be created beforehand. This is very different than the first thing that we saw with Robot, because Robot, the tests were kind of being created on demand. Here, the tests have to be created before you jump in and start testing. And folks, when you're planning out your sprints, this is usually one of like those, I don't want to say catch-22s, but this is usually where some teams run into some problems because you wait too long to test, or you don't know what you're testing because the requirements are changing. And this is where you, as an organization, you might need a better like business analyst, or I come from the defense world, so we have systems engineers. You want better requirements management up front, which is kind of a tug of war with teams that are agile because they tend to not believe that much in requirements. And Sean, maybe on Doru, we talk about requirements because it's very, very important to talk about requirements. And so, yeah, it's good to have good requirements and know your requirements up front so that you can get ahead of your testing and be able to do your testing earlier. Because if you wait to the end, and if you're anything like, I don't know, I've done this in the past where you do your testing after you've written the code. Shouldn't be doing that. But a lot of people like to write the code, hand jam the code, especially now in this vibe coding age, right? You vibe code your way through your application, and then you think about testing it, which is really interesting because my boss here, Sean, we've been vibe coding for a few weeks now, and he kind of does the opposite. He builds the test cases first, which is more like aligned with test-driven development, and then you start writing code against that test-driven or against your tests. So let me know in the chat, folks. Do you guys do TDD, test-driven development? It's one of my best practices, but it's always easier said than done. Doing test-driven development takes more effort up front than it does just coding, because, you know, coding is the fun part. All right, so let's talk about using Cucumber in the Xray. So in the next video, we're going to see an example in Cucumber. So let's go on. We are 31% done with the course here, and let's get this video. This is a long video. Holy moly, 5 minutes. So let's see if we can't power through this one here. So we're going to go into a story, and we have a test that is associated to the story. Now here, this scenario might be a little hard to see, but this is the gherkin. This is the given when something, something, something. Okay. Now we're going to jump into our code editor, and we're going to have a section here where we're going to be able to basically connect. So this is our API. We are referencing the key for the work item, and we're bringing in that gherkin that we just had, and then we're running it, right? So all of the testing that needed to happen was defined in that calc, right? It's right here, right? Given when I enter a 3 into the calculator and I have entered something, whatever, right? So all the gherkin steps are right here. And so you're basically just running through it inside of your editor here. Okay. So we had them in Jira. We now have them inside of our code editor, and we are going to essentially call them, right? We're going to call the code. We're going to do the action. So this, you do need to be comfortable with this, folks. This is not something you're going to learn in 5 minutes. Like, you need to go learn how to do proper testing, unit level testing, all kinds of testing, right? But once you have your code all set up so that it interacts with your tests, then you can essentially just run it and it happens automatically. You're going to get some pass fails, right? And that pass and failing, that stuff's ultimately going to make it back into Jira. It's going to make it back into our test results so we can see which of our tests passed and which of our tests failed. And so as you can see, we have a couple build failures here. So we're going to go back into Jira. And right now we're looking at the test here, but we're going to go into the story. And you can see that our story is not okay. Our coverage is saying we're not okay because we had some failure. And so when you jump into it, we're going to be able to see the tests, and then we're going to see the results of those tests, right? So again, all this stuff was automatically generated just from the gherkin. So we can go into our results here. So this is the summary of the test run. And we're going to expand our steps. And you can see here that the very last step is the one that failed. And so naturally, we're probably going to go and fix some stuff, right? So I'm going to fast forward a little bit here. They basically go make some changes, right? It's an iterative process where you change your code. You don't change your test report or your test case, right? You want to make sure you keep that test case pretty consistent. But you go make your updates, and then you're going to have a successful pass on your tests. We're going to be able to come back in, refresh our test runs. This time you're going to see that we're going to have passes, right? So it's all green, and we have good coverage. Our test is officially passed. Everything's good. All of it is expected, exactly how we're expecting it to be. And so now we can successfully get through this. So we're going to fast forward here a little bit. I think that's pretty much it, right? So just key takeaway here is you have your gherkin set up first, and then you bring it in. So a quick recap for y'all. Cucumber has Xray as a master workflow. So stories in Jira initially created along with some Cucumber tests, again, using the gherkin specification. You have your project code in Jira contains a buggy class and automation code associated with the gherkin steps. Exporting the dot features from Xray, running the test, and importing the results from the command line could be done using a CI tool. And after fixing the class, Cucumber tests can be run again with success. If the gherkin scenarios are modified, they need to be exported so that the automation runs code against them. So keep that in mind. Normally, though, I don't think that you would want to be updating your tests, like the gherkin, unless you have significantly new discoveries. Temporary dot features files generated, exported from Jira, tag with the original Jira issues. Your test execution will be created, and the results associated will be created automatically. And then coverage is automatically tracked in the related story requirements since tests are linked to them. All right, moving on. We have Git as the master. So this time we're switching gears a little bit, and we're going to have some teams prefer to use the version control system as a master for managing your Cucumber features. Let's make this full screen here so you can all see it better. Although you may be using Jira as a master, some prefer to edit Cucumber tests elsewhere and then store them in Git, for example. So we can create our Cucumber tests and the respective step code in some other tool, add a unique tag to each scenario in the form of @id::xxx. You're going to import your existing Cucumber test using the REST API, and you're going to export Cucumber features from Jira to the CI environment using the REST API or CI plugins. So you're going to execute tests in the CI environment, and you're going to report results to Xray using the REST API or other CI plugins. And then you repeat the steps. So on the Git side, you're going to create them in the other tool, right? So we're not using Jira as our baseline here. We're going to import them into Jira because they were created outside. Then we're going to export. So the rest of these steps are going to be the same. It's just the creation happens outside of Jira. So here's the workflow. So you're going to ensure the scenarios are mapped correctly. This is going to be critical. You want to, in order to guarantee that the scenarios are always mapped to the same test issues in Jira, you need to have in mind some basic rules and conventions that are allowed. And so the feature path is your name path. You're going to add that special ID tag that we talked about here. All right, so let's see. Let's take a look at how it actually works. All right, we're 41% done and about halfway through the course here. So, I'll mute that audio. All right, so we're inside of a story. Notice no tests, no gherkin, no nothing. Okay, nothing is in here. We are completely fresh. Nothing is associated. This test, this requirement, the story is completely uncovered. We're switching over to our editor where we're going to have our gherkin. So we have developed our gherkin here, and we did the special call out, right? The ID, right, that we needed to do per the instructions. We're going to have our ID out here. And so we're defining our gherkin and basically tying it back to the Jira work item that is going to own the stuff. Then we're going to import or run this shell script here that's going to import stuff. We're going to have our token. So we're going to be able to essentially connect and talk with Jira. So after that runs, we're going to do a quick refresh here on the browser. And now I'm expecting to see a test, right? So here we have our test. You're going to notice that the requirement was not run because we haven't ran it yet. But we now have our scenarios in here, right? So the gherkin came in. And you notice that we didn't type it inside of Jira. We typed it inside of our IDE, and then we brought it in, okay? So now that it's in here, right, then I would expect the rest to be basically what we've covered before, right? You're going to then export them out. You're going to put them in that feature section. You're going to then run. You're going to have some failures. We're going to go back into Jira. Our statuses are going to show that things passed or that things failed. In this case, it failed, right? We had some build failures. Right, so we're fast forwarding through here. We can see exactly what failed, where in the steps. We can go make our changes, fix our code, right? And then we can run again. We can see that we have a successful build here now. And so now when we go back to Jira, we're going to see that we have a successful pass run. And now we're basically done, right? So we have good coverage. And yeah, so that's very simple to do from that perspective. So the recap of this one is stories initially created in Jira without any test issues. Cucumber.feature files containing scenario outline map in Git alongside with the code are synced to Xray. The project code in Xray contains buggy class and automation. That was the problem that we're trying to fix. And then we basically imported or exported the features to and from Xray, ran the tests in the command line, and then after we fixed them, we ran again and we saw that we had successes. So that's good there. All right, now we're going to talk about custom test frameworks and see how that impacts life. So tests need to be created beforehand as manual, composed of steps, or generic. Those are the only two supported. Xray JSON's format can be used to report results for that test based on the issue key. So you're going to create the test, implement the automated test code, run it, and then see the results. So you can see it starts to get very repetitive here, but you don't have to use the two methods that we did. It's kind of open and flexible to other tools out there. All right, now let's talk about the CI/CD. So we're going to focus on Jenkins. In the chat, folks, do you use Jenkins? Is Jenkins one of your preferred tools here? Always curious to see what kind of CI/CD tools people are using. I first started off with Jenkins. Jenkins was one of my first build tools out there. Then I moved over to TeamCity. But Jenkins was definitely the very, very first one. And fun fact, my boss and I, we know a guy that looks just like this guy. And he likes to go to conferences and dress up just like him. And it's always a blast to see him in person. It's kind of cool to see the little character. All right, so a little bit about Jenkins before moving forward. It's an open source orchestrator normally used for implementing CI/CD. It can be used for multiple purposes, running some scripts on demand or upon a trigger, for example, due to a commit. Highly customizable with additional plugins. Most of them are free. The background on Jenkins, a project previously known as Job is something composed of steps, tasks such as check out the code, compile it, run the unit test, package it, run the integration tests, publish the reports, and then eventually we're going to deploy. So a project may be run manually, triggered by code commit, triggered by a REST API or some other schedule that you might have a nightly code run. So you're going to install the Xray plugin in Xray, inside of Jenkins, and configure your Jira instance, whether your server, DC, or cloud. Configure a project using a task to submit test automation results, and that's it. You can now track the results in Jira, impact on its coverage. Setting up Jenkins integration with Jira. So install the plugin, manage Jenkins, go to manage plugins, go to the configure system, create a Jira instance configuration. You're going to put in all the code here. Seems like you just put your Jira URL, your credentials, not very safe. And then you'll test your connection. All right, next, let's watch a video on how to configure this. All right, 2 minutes, not too bad. Let's jump in here. So we are no longer in Xray, folks. We're no longer in Jira. We're no longer in Xray. We are inside of Jenkins at this point, and we're basically going to go to the configure system section, and we're going to install Jenkins. Well, we're going to install Xray in Jenkins. So we'll scroll our way down to the Xray configuration. This is where you're going to then add all the credentials to actually get into your Xray environment here. So we're going to just basically go through all these steps, determine where it's at, determine your credentials. Be very careful here, folks. Be very, very mindful when you're connecting things, right? Like, you don't want to hold up. Okay, sorry about that. So again, we're just making our credentials. We're connecting our Xray with Jenkins. You can connect multiple instances together. Just be very mindful and careful, right? Plain text, passwords, not always a good practice. So we're no longer in Kansas. All right, moving along here, we're going to talk about some steps here of importing your results into Xray. So inside of Jenkins, we want to bring the results back into Xray. So you're going to choose your configured Jira instance. You're going to identify the automation report. Some formats will support regexes or wildcards. Folks, I never learned regexes, but thank God for ChatGPT, who knows all the regexes in the world. Choose the test automation report format. Specify a few fields for the test automation. All right, so let's watch the next video where we're going to learn how to basically configure this thing so we can send the data back in to Jira. Oh, apparently not yet. So we still got another couple slides to go. Is that right? Yeah. That's how they did it. Okay. Let's skip that part then. We're going to go straight into integrating with CI/CD tools based on pipelines as code config. So a pipeline is a way of dealing with the tasks related to the application lifecycle. Think of it as all the steps required to make the build, test it, deploy it. Some of these steps happen sequentially or on parallel. Most can be automated. Pipelines deal with continuous integration, delivery, and deployment. Some tools provide CI/CD as service defined in a pipeline configuration, YAML-based stored alongside with the application code. So these are the components of a pipeline. So we have some job, we have steps, and then we have another job that may or may not fail. Pipelines are used to automate tasks, avoid errors, and they're composed of jobs focused on certain goals, each composed by a step. Jobs can depend on one another or run in parallel. A simple pipeline can be used to compile, run unit and integration tests, and deploy, for example, build, test, deploy. Testing can be done at any stage. Submitting test automation results to Xray is usually done using one or more steps. So here's a graphical representation of a pipeline. So folks, if you've never done CI/CD, this might be going right over your head, but this is a typical build pipeline where you have your build, your test, your browser tests, dev, staging, and then production. And so you basically build your steps, and every single one of these will do something in there. Here are some of the more popular ones. We still have Jenkins. I was surprised to find out Jenkins was still in use, but you're probably most likely going to be using GitLab pipelines or GitHub Actions if you're in one of these more modern tools. So in the chat, who's on Jenkins? Who's on GitLab? Who's on GitHub? Which one are you guys using? Let me know in the chat. I'm really curious to see which of these tools you're actually on. All right, so let's look at an example of a Java plus JUnit plus Jenkins. So starting to sound like a rap song here. So using the declarative pipelines or DSLs recommended or scripted pipelines, the Xray plugin for Jenkins can submit the results, and you can use Jenkins snippet generator to generate the code to Xray in each step. Very complicated. I would, if this is the first time doing this, folks, again, use AI. It's your best friend. This stuff should be pretty well documented. There's a bunch of ways to look at it, from how to do it in GitLab and then how to do it with GitHub Actions. The key takeaway here, folks, is that you should know that these integrations are possible, so that you can go into your respective CI/CD tools to be able to get these implementations. Because the key takeaway is you want this. You want Xray to be integrated in your pipeline so that all of this happens automagically. Because if it's not happening automagically, you're running into some problems here. All right, so we're back in Jenkins, and I believe we're taking a step back. I think we're going to go back to where we're going to connect. Wow, this is taking me back, by the way. I haven't done Jenkins since 2017. 2016, 2017 was the last time I was configuring Jenkins, so this is definitely taking me back. So yeah, you're going to select your Jira instance. You're going to pick your format, and then you're going to provide all this information here. So I'm going to fast forward through that. Then you just do a run. You do a build, right? And then your build's going to take care of sending the data back into Jira. And so once the build completes, we go back into our test runs, and you can see that the statuses of everything, whatever happened in our CI/CD tool, it's going to come into Jira, and it's all just going to be recorded for us. So we can get all the benefits of Jira and Xray and your CI/CD tools without having to do a whole lot of manual work other than that initial setup. And so once you get through that initial setup, then it's a little bit more of a walk in the park. All right, so let's take a look at our review, right? So Java, Maven-based projects, automated test implementations as JUnit test methods, and then Jenkins can be used to build the project, run the test, and submit the results to Xray. Powerful, powerful stuff here, folks. In the chat, does anybody have their automated tests implemented? Anybody looking to get them set up? We here at Release Team, this is something that we do quite a bit. Not me, but members of our teams definitely do this stuff a lot more frequently than I would. All right, so now let's take a look at the video where we're going to see the results for the cucumber. And folks, we are almost done. We are down to the last 1, 2, 3, 4 sections here. There's another video here. We got another video after this one. 2 more slides. Sean here, enjoy setting these up. Sean, you need a better hobby. It's been a minute since I've done my build setups, but yeah, I used to do these all the time. I don't know that I ever did any test automation. I think most teams kind of they shy away from test automation, but you can see how valuable it is, because all these steps here that we're looking at, you would normally have to do these manually. And if you're doing these manually, then, well, that means something, right? That means you're giving up time to do something else. And so you should try to automate whenever possible. All right, so let's keep fast forwarding here. We have our build. We basically set up in our build steps to do all the Xray gherkin stuff that we're looking at right now. The build is running. We're going to get our results inside of Jira. All the tests pass. The coverage is good. Everything's great. Everything's kosher there. We're going to see our test execution statuses, so we can see in a little bit more detail the inputs that were fed, the buttons, right? All the steps that were taken. Again, these are gherkin based, so we have the given, and, when, then type of scenario. You can make on modifications there. So yeah, so nothing too complicated, folks. Right, in the interest of time, we're just going to keep on going, just so that you're aware here. So recap: CI using Jenkins plus Cucumber. So specification managed in Xray and extracted during the build process. Steps implemented in Ruby. Code stored in Git and checked out during the CI. Jenkins uses the build to extract the tests from Xray, run, and then submit them back to Xray. So again, all this stuff, folks, can be automated. You shouldn't have to be doing this stuff manually. All right, last video here. We're going to see how to submit results from GitHub using GitHub Actions. So I'm assuming the steps are going to be very similar, right? We're going to make our way over to our API keys. We need to generate an API key. This is an interesting way. I don't think, oh, this is an Xray API key. This is not a Jira API key. We're going to go back into GitHub. I'm going to go into the settings of our GitHub. And we're going to put into our code here. We're going to basically call out some important things. We're going to edit this file. We have our secrets, we have our connection, and we have everything we need so that Xray and GitHub can talk to each other. We'll do a quick run. As you can see here, we got our action building. It's doing its thing, the same thing that Jenkins was doing earlier. It's running through all the tests. We're going to get test results. You can see that we're going to be submitting to Xray. And so the results of all those things are going to that one Jira work item. And then when we go to Jira, you can see everything got pushed. Awesome. Yes. That's exactly what we want, folks. All right. Last slide. Last set of slides. Some recommendations. Your teams may be using a wide range of automation frameworks. It's okay. As a last resource, you may be using JUnit XML reports to have visibility of automation results. Builds are always by default triggered from the CI/CD side on code commits periodically. Having prompt visibility of the automation results is crucial for CI. Tests may automatically be provisioned on Xray depending on the format being used. Carefully choose what to upload. Results from multiple CI builds can trigger aggregated and consolidated tests on a test plan. So restrict what you upload and when. Don't upload unit test results, relevant tests only. Properly choose the upload frequency. Don't mix the CI with test management tool. Leave detailed execution logs in the CI tool. Cucumber and other Gherkin-based frameworks, try the 2 different workflows using Xray as a master or Git and check out which one works best for you. And then integrating with your own framework. So use the Xray JSON format, which supports manual Cucumber generic tests. This format has access to all fields of the test run and can add attachments. Yeah, so that's it for that one. Let's see what's next here. We're going to take a brief survey. Let's start the survey. I'm going to give this one a 7. I think this was let's go with an 8. I think this was a good course. Very technical. Very technical. Good class. All right, submit that survey there. Hit next. We got okay, we're almost done there. 93%, 97%. We're going to get our future resources. Okay, sure. Don't care about those. I need to get my certificate so I can show it to my boss, even though I'm doing these live streams so he can see that I did these. And that's it. So we are basically done with test automation here. We're going to move over tomorrow. So make sure you're coming back 12 o'clock Pacific time tomorrow. We're going to be doing document generator for Xray Cloud. So we've already done some reporting, but we didn't really go into details. But we're going to jump into the document generator, which is probably the more important or the more popular one of the bunch here. So again, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Folks, thank you so much for being here on this live stream. You're watching the replay. Let us feel free to answer those questions and comments that I've been asking throughout the video, folks. And again, subscribe to the channel. We will see you all tomorrow where we talk about document generation for Xray Cloud. So thank you all so much, and we'll see you tomorrow.